Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Carly with WESK. For those who are unfamiliar, we host a free webinar, usually every month, but now on a weekly basis. These webinars are recorded and can be viewed on demand at any time at wesk.ca/services/resources. Today, our topic is COVID-19 Shock and Rebound. It's presented by Nick Kochar. He's a program advisor at WESK and chief strategist and CEO of Refresh Inc. If you have any questions during the presentation, please write them in the chat box. I will let Nick decide if he will answer them during the presentation or after. Thank you, Nick, for joining us today. Please start whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well in COVID life. I just turned on my my video and my mic, so I hope this is coming across clear and you can see me okay. At some point here, I'm going to just maybe turn off the screen just so that I could get the to maximize the internet connection here. But at least you can see me, and I'm very excited to be able to be your presenter today. So thanks for tuning in and joining us. I wanted to say that it's this conversation that we're about to have, this presentation. It's the result of a lot of work, just trying to stay on top of what's been happening in our world and in pandemic life. There's a lot of information that's flying at you, I'm sure, and changes that you probably didn't expect that you would have been going through even as early as a month ago. So what I tried to do is to put something together that might help you get through that, and especially the lens that I took through this is that of a leadership position where you're making decisions about how to run your business, what's next, how should I interpret what I'm seeing. So I'm really hoping that this information is fruitful and helpful to you. And my one ask is going to be, even at the end, I'll have my email address there posted on the slides as well. Let me know if you wanted to see more, if you're looking for more information or more content. That helps me prepare as well, and just get a gauge as to where everybody is in terms of the information that they're looking to consume versus the information they have consumed. So I just wanted to, really quickly introduce myself, and then we'll kick it off right away. So I'm going to turn off the camera here for a moment, and I'm going to start flipping slides here. It's my first webinar experience here with ClickMeeting too. So I'm hoping this is straightforward as it appears to be. So I'm here. I'm just going to turn off the video, right? Okay. So. So first things first, about this presentation, it definitely comes with a business lens. That means that it's not that I'm dismissing or not wanting to focus on the health, because of course health and dealing with the virus is of utmost importance. But that's something I want to leave that to the health professionals to speak on. This conversation, this presentation, it's a compilation of research and wisdom that I have been working on, and then just peppering my own thoughts throughout the whole thing. And as I've said more than once, Saskatchewan is flat, but your recovery shouldn't be. And recovery is definitely one curve we don't want to flatten. So let's go. Okay, hopefully that worked. My slide transition is okay. So you should be able to see an agenda slide now. And really, so a little bit about myself. I've been in the strategy world for about 20 years. My background is in competitive strategy and marketing. So there's a good chance that if you're at the WESK office, and especially when we reopen our doors physically, if there's conversations surrounding marketing and branding, there's a good chance that I might be a person that you're going to end up talking to at some point. So that's me in a nutshell. And I am a program advisor at WESK. I do lots of business advisory, and when I'm not at WESK, I run an agency in Saskatoon called Refresh that also focuses on the execution of the marketing and the branding. So where are we now? That's what in terms of our agenda, I want to have a quick discussion about some macroeconomics. I didn't want this to be a theoretical presentation, but I need to touch on it just a tiny bit. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about what we're calling the shock and the rebound, before providing you with just some tools and resources to help you to navigate. So, all right. Here's what we think is happening right now in your world. You've got concerns about the business, the economy. Where are things going? What we're trying to do in this presentation is to maybe demystify the current business situation that you might be experiencing, to see if some of the slides that I'm about to present to you, if they feel relevant and they feel accurate in terms of what you might be going through right now. Then we'll talk about where are we headed. So it's not a prediction of the future, but there is a bit of a formula in terms of how recessions go into recovery. And so I want to share and explore that with you, just to see if that might be something that feels right to you as well. And then very concretely, I have a series of moves, next steps, if you will, in terms of how you might, as you experience the different phases, you'll be able to say to yourself, you know what, these are some things that I should be doing or I haven't done. Maybe I should be doing them. So that's how this is all set up. And I'm hoping that when this presentation is done, we have demystified the current business situation. We have had some clarity in terms of where we're heading, and also a deeper dive in understanding your next moves. All right, so on to the next slide. So I hope you can see this okay. It's what you're looking at right now is it's called a V graph, and it's the basics in economics. What we're experiencing right now with COVID is what's referred to as a economic shock. So on the graph, what you see, the dip here. Okay, I'm going to absolutely impress you with my click meeting skills here, and I'm going to turn on this little mouse. So I hope you can see my mouse moving now. So what I'm showing you here is, you see these lines here that where we're showing we're showing GDP, and then we're seeing a drop, and then it starts to increase again, and then onwards it goes. So if you can see that, all right. What I'm wanting to show you there is that represents our economy. And so we are seeing very clearly a slowdown and the dip. And so it's the first line, the dip, the downward dip of the V. And we don't know exactly where the sort of the bottom or the trough of that V is, but we know we have been going down since March. So what's important to know about this is that, yes, there is a displacement in our economy, but the growth eventually does come back. It rebounds. And so there's three things that could possibly be happening in terms of the way it's going to rebound. It's going to either return to where it left off, which is the most likely case. We may see some changes to our economy where it's permanent and not recoverable, which is very unlikely. And then there's also structural damage, which is where things that have been lost, we will never recover them again. That's not a likely case. What really determines where we're going to end up in this economy in the new world is really the length of the recession, because that downward line is we just don't know where the bottom of it is, and that's why we're having constant communication being provided to us, whether it's federal or from community. We don't know exactly where the bottom of the decline is. So, is this new? Is this something we've ever experienced in our world? Well, it is. More specifically, we have seen from prior epidemics that all of them were V-shaped. So in 2002, we had SARS. Before that, in 1968, we had the Hong Kong flu, or H3N2. In 1958, we also had what was called the Asian flu, and then in 1918, we've had the Spanish flu. And in all of those cases, as I mentioned, all of them were V-shaped. So the drop in the economy was sharp, and then the recovery was slower to come back. So what we're trying to say to you here is that it's absolutely an uncomfortable time in our world, but we've seen this. We've been here before, and recovery will occur. And if history is any indication, it's going to be a V where it starts returning back to normal at some point. So what are you going to do with that? Just 1 second here, please. There's a number of things that happen when we have that dip. In other words, there's a number of things that happen when we are shocked. Obviously, we're going to have that impact to the consumer confidence. We're going to feel that pain from the supply side because as the virus starts shutting down production and disables, critical things that are happening, gaps turn into problems. Production can halt. Temporary layoffs, permanent layoffs occur. So it's that downward slide. But there's going to be huge variability across the economies and the industries. How many of you wish that you owned Purell right now, or Lysol, or Charmin, or and if you might be surprised to hear this one too, Nintendo. Why do I say that? It's because you can't possibly get a Nintendo machine right now. They're all sold out. And if you're familiar with what happened in BC with the folks who bought the $100,000 of toilet paper to make some extra profit on that, you would be surprised, or maybe you'd be surprised to know that there are actually activities like that happening with Nintendo and video game consoles. So people are actually buying them up and trying to sell them at a higher profit. So what I'm saying here is that we're experiencing these dips, but some industries and some economies are doing all right. And so the rebound is obviously then the reversal of the effects of the shock that we're going through. Now, McKinsey & Co. is a strategy organization in the United States. They talk about 5 horizons, and I'm a big fan of them. They talk about the resolve, resilience, return, Reimagine Ation, reform. So I took those titles and I put some definition around them. And I think this part is where we move more from the theory into more of a practical, hands-on. Here's what you need to do, and here's what you want to know. So let's, without further ado, let's get into those right away as well. I'm just flipping slides, so bear with me 1 second here, please. Okay, here we go. Oops, one more. All right. So the first one is talking about the resolve, that horizon 1 or the phase 1. And that's what we've been going through. So tell me if this is familiar to you. So at that stage, this takes us back to approximately mid-March, where we had to address the immediate challenges that COVID-19 represents to your business, workforce, customers, partners, anything that had to do with your business. You had to take stock and say, what do I do now? So at that time, management is doing a number of things. They're trying to figure out what exactly their crisis response effort looks like. So what and this is what I'm asking you now as participants and thinking about your business. you've gone through and you've had to be, in the last month or so, been thinking about your business continuity. It's not a good situation, but lots of decisions had to be made. And it's called the resolve stage because we really need to figure out, and we still need to determine the scale, the pace, and the depth of action that's going to be required in your business. Do you remember going through that? And feel free to pipe in the chat here, just so that I can get a sense of where you are. And if you say, "Yep, this, I know that stage, and I was definitely there," or "I'm still in it." And so in that stage, in the resolve stage, we need to stay on top of the federal, provincial laws. We need to be very careful on predictions, and at the same time, with all of the chaos that's happening in our life, we've got to make sure that that we, as leaders, as managers, entrepreneurs, we have to make sure to not forget to de-stress and in keeping a healthy mind, because it's a huge part of what it's going to take in order to recover. Our minds, if we're distracted, and if it's when we feel the weight of the world on our shoulders, it becomes very hard to figure out what exactly are we trying to do with our business. So on the finance side, and I'm going to just stop for 2 seconds. What I've done is I've laid this out in terms of the pillars of business. So more specifically, for those of you who are familiar with a business plan, you will know that there are 5 pieces to it: management, the finances, operations, HR, and sales and marketing. And I tried to lay out all of the different recommendations based on the different area of the business that needs to pay attention to it. Most of the recommendations and the thoughts that you're about to hear about are going to be in the management, because this conversation really is trying to help leaders and management figure out what their next moves are. So you'll see it be heavily tipped to the management as opposed to the other areas. So with that said, yes, with finance, there's going to be a decrease in cash flow, and what decisions need to be made in order to maximize your chances of business survival. So whatever leadership decides as the right course of action, the finance department, or maybe you're both leadership and the finance, you have to be okay with it fiscally, that this is what you're going to do. Operationally, we have to assess. Lots of businesses are dealing with these sharp slowdowns in their operation. Some are accelerating. As I mentioned, the wipes. It couldn't be a better time to be a manufacturer in that space. How much of your operations can shift to remote working? We hear about that all the time. Go remote, people working from home. You've seen the memes and all the other communication that's related to remote working and remote working life. But it doesn't mean all of your business can necessarily make that leap. What is it? Is it 100%? Is it 0? Is it in between? So you got to plan and you got to plan and make that leap. Another thing you had to think about, and maybe still are thinking about, is, do you shut the business down? Or do you wait for an order before you're told to? So, a lot of us have already been through that stage where we saw systematically how the economy and our worlds went to a grinding halt. So we've been through a lot of this part already. Even remote work is now becoming established as sort of the default operating mode. And then for human resources, think about this too. For those who are working from home with kids underfoot, it's a challenge. Even in the chat box here, how many of you might be at home with kids, and how's that working for you? I'm expecting it's got to have been a challenge. So I'd love to see some replies in the chat if you don't mind taking a moment. So it all changed on us. Our world completely changed. Do you have an employee safety plan, especially if your business is deemed essential? I know, for example, a business that their key product is ambulances, And they're saying, on one hand, they're deemed important and essential, but at the same time, how do you deal with that, and how do you make sure that your employees are safe? With When you're deemed essential and yet you have to work very close to others, you're at risk, or your employees are at risk. So it's a big deal to figure out exactly how you're going to conduct business when you're deemed essential, yet you're still trying to figure out what does a safe working environment looks like. And sales and marketing, I can't stress this enough. Do communicate. The people, your clients and your customers who have been loyal fans and clients, customers of yours, they need to know. They need to hear from you. They want to hear from you. They want to know. Are you okay? What are you up to? Absolutely, do not go silent on them, but do communicate policies and procedures. Are you going to be shutting down for the short term? Are you a business that can provide takeout services? So people need to hear from you, and if you are going to close, how long. Maybe what you do is you do it in increments to say until further notice. That's one way to do it, but maybe actually putting some hard dates so people know when to check in next to say, oh, okay, are you open yet? So give your customers and your clients something that they can grab onto, so that they know how to what they can expect from you and your offerings. Does that make sense? I hope so. So that was Horizon 1, and as I said, we've largely been through that. The next section here is going to be on resilience. And I think this quote is quite fitting. Is that we know it's not a great situation to be in, but we have to figure out what our next moves are. We have to recompose, and we have to figure out how are we going to get our business to survive. So in that example, in this phase, we obviously understand that the acute pullback of the economy, it's going to hurt. And we also understand, I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't agree that we are dealing with the necessity to protect public health, and we're willing to, by force, in some respects, allow the economic well-being to be affected and reduced. So, a few things that I want to mention here. Number one is, we do need to come up with broader resilience plans. The shock will begin to upturn established industries. So places that you've come to know about, who have been a leader, a pillar in our world, they're going to get hurt, and some of them may not actually survive. So there's going to be a change in competitive positions through pandemics and epidemics. So think about, what are your next moves going to look like as a business? Have you sort of been have you been sort of the industry leader? And do you feel like you can continue to be that industry leader as you get through COVID-19? Is there a chance that maybe you were sort of the third strongest player in the market, and is there a chance for you to go ahead and move your way up to second or even the first? So you need to take a look at that and say, what exactly am I going to do to grow my business and to come out of this okay? Self-identify your category. So when I talk about that, I talk about categories of businesses. Are you a beneficiary, meaning that your business has done quite well through the turbulent times? Are you squeezed, meaning yes, you're going to be affected, but you're gonna come out okay? And of course, the challenged is hurt. Cash flow is extremely tight, and you need to pivot, and you need to pivot hard, very fast. And in some cases, rely on some of the resources that the federal government is providing as well. So a few things here. that I would want to focus on. So do take a look at your client base. Just because past performance or lifetime values, if you use those metrics, they may not be actually very relevant right now, because again, the upturn is going to cause changes, and it's going to become a little less predictable. Just because they were good clients with you previously, they may not be going forward. So you need to think about that. Opportunities, look for them. They're there. Find them, nurture them, build them, and hold them. Can you go those beneficiaries, those businesses that are booming? Are those your clients? Is there something you can do with them right now? Is there something you can do to continue to grow that market while the economy is depressed? Is there a way for you to continue to grow your business? Yeah, for the squeeze, for those, can you still service clients even though you know that you're going to have a little bit of a slower time getting paid by them? If you can manage that cash flow, you may come out ahead of this game. So if clients are buying from you that under normal circumstances might pay you in 30 days, can you weather the storm by still providing services, even though you know it might take 60 to 90 days to get paid? So consider that as a possibility. And then if you're in a situation where you're talking about the challenged or businesses that are not going to be able to pay you or are hurt, or you yourself are in that category, can you forge some strong client relationships right now? We are seeing a strong policy. So I beg your pardon. I jumped a line there. The ability to work with clients or people who would normally have paid you and say, that's okay, let's still do work, and let's do some branding and let's do some marketing surrounding that. It's not a bad way to go, but it does demand some objective criteria. You need to be careful how much you can quote unquote give away. You need to know that it's got to be strategic and it's on point, and that you can weather the storm and manage your cash flow. Next point I want to talk about is just doing to assess the magnitude of the economic impact. The government is trying to do things to make life sustainable. What if they're not enough? We're seeing a strong response, but if they're not where you need to be, I'm going to speak to this point in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But we really need to take a look and see if what instruments are available to you that you can use to get yourself through this tough time. And so don't be afraid to be checking in on that on a regular basis and making sure that you're looking at all the options that are available to you. Again, de-stress, keep a healthy mind. So important in this stage. Staying current on federal and provincial news. I'm sure everyone who remembers at the start of COVID-19, we were introduced to some relief measures that were provided at the federal level, but then very quickly they heard that it wasn't enough, and so there's been a continual change of the policies in order to respond to what the demands are. So make sure you are keeping on top of the federal and provincial news. Do be careful on predictions. It's a slippery slope. We have historical information to suggest what's happened, but be careful on the predictions, and you don't want to get yourself in a situation. And I think a large part of the reason why we saw such a slowdown of or the purchasing of toilet paper and all the wipes that you would normally expect to have access to, people buying such ridiculous quantities of it. It was all fear mongering and a lot of predictions that, well, we're going to run out of it. So just be careful on what you hear out there, and make sure that you're acting on a good solid foundation of information as opposed to the predictions. Talk to your advocacy organization. So, for example, us, WESK, we definitely have a collective, we have a strong voice with the federal and provincial government. So communicate with us. It's actually the reason why we've also been putting out surveys and asking questions, because we needed to hear from you to know if there's something that we can do and let the government know that there's cracks that people are falling through, and just maybe they could do something to correct it. So I see at the top of the screen we've got this little plug for a free WESK membership, which is a perfect time for me to mention to you that if you didn't know, WESK memberships are free in the month of April, and they are going to be free in May. So if you are not a member, or you know someone who ought to become a member, this would be absolutely the time to go ahead and become a member. So that is, and just to be clear, that's not just for the month. It's an annual membership that's made free to you if you register in April or May. Okay. I'm going to move along unless there's any questions or thoughts about stage 2, and I think the next one is where we maybe are going to be very interested in hearing about as we move into the rebound. Oh, I've got one more piece here to share with you on the resilience part too, which is on the finance side. Cash management issues need to be of utmost importance. So do focus on that. I've already spoken to the finance side, which is to pay attention and look at the federal supports that are available. I have one example there that talks about the emergency commercial rent assistance. That's one of many support pillars that are out there available to you. Do negotiate with your suppliers and your creditors. I think everybody can understand that it's tough. It's tough times right now. Do you need to consider insolvency options too? Is it possible that the business may not be viable through this journey, and look at those options? You never want to go down that path unnecessarily, but when you're revisiting just where the business is and the situation, you do need to look at all the options. Operating, again, you've got staff potentially working from home, so just be aware that you may not see the productivity levels the same as when they were in the office. Yeah, potentially they could be better, but more often than not, especially if kids are involved, you have to understand that it's going to be a little bit different in the working space. Human resources, a lot of the population right now, there's uncertainty and there's personal financial stress. Does this ring a bell to anybody? So you want to stay connected to the team. You want to have these weekly check-ins or touch points. As a business owner, do you need to adjust your staffing levels? If you do, just make sure you're treating people with respect. It's hard for everyone. So just think about the other side of this is when rebound occurs, when you're looking to have, when your demand starts to go on the upswing, how you treat people now is going to make all the difference as to if you're going to have them back or not, and to what capacity. So just remember that when you're dealing with your staffing levels. In the sales and marketing, again, it's the same comment as the last section too. You do want to make sure that you're updating your customers and your clients. Circumstances may have changed. There could be new information that presents itself as terms of how you're going to run your business. Maybe you were saying initially that you won't be able to do a takeout service, and now all of a sudden you've changed tune and you felt like you can do that now. Well, let people know that. That's really important. And again, don't go silent on your community. You definitely want to make sure that they know what's going on in your world. So I won't go into that in too much more detail, but it's such an important thing to make sure that you're updating and letting people know what's going on in your world, so that they can know and understand how they can engage with you through this turbulent time. So the first two sections, the first two sections that we were talking about, the resolve, the resilience, was the shock and experiencing that downward swing. And now we find ourselves waiting to see exactly what that trough is, that bottom point, before we start to see the recovery and the return. So in this stage, as the quote you see on the screen says, that tomorrow really does belong to the people who prepare for it today. Returning is the stage upon which we create the plan to return business to scale as quickly as the COVID-19 situation evolves and the effects become clearer. And this is a little bit of an opportunity where we start to say, is the worst over? How are we planning to come back on the other end of this? I think a lot of the shock is now past us. We know what COVID life feels like right now, and maybe you've got that plan figured out to say, okay, you know what? I think I can hold the line and I can manage my costs, but I need to start thinking about what are my next steps. And that's the return phase. That's the part that we start to see the bottom of the V and starting to climb up the other side. So in the return phase, it's a few things that you want to look at as well. And most of them are going to be focused in the management side. So number one, it's not that easy to just suddenly say, well, I guess we're back in business, let's get started. It's really not about that business as usual mindset. There is a new normal, and you need to consider that. Specifically, your supply chains, people who have been halted for a month or two, it's going to take a little while for them to get back up to speed and to be able to process your orders. And it applies in all industries. If you're running a service business, I'll just give you an example, maybe like a salon as an example. You may need product, and what if your product is not available right now? What if there's a back order? So you need to start thinking about that. Even if we've got that the go ahead that you're part of a phase and it's green light and you need to get started, it's not that easy to just suddenly say, well, on that day away I go. You need to think about the scale and the timing in terms of the supplies and potentially the products that you are in need of. So when you think about whether it's materials or whether it's your staffing, the weakest point of the chain is going to determine that success. So you need to think about as we are having conversations about reopening Saskatchewan now, you really got to ask yourself, am I ready? What's it going to take? What's day one supposed to look like? This is the time where you're supposed to be asking those questions and figuring that out. So the clock is ticking. We have the benefit, I suppose, in that Saskatchewan is opening sooner than many of the other provinces, but you need to do it in a smart way. This is the time where you start thinking about that. So reassess your entire business system, plan for those actions in order to be able to come back and scale up in an appropriate way. One thing I also want to put out there is also the possibility that the economic pullback that we're experiencing, and we're talking about coming out the other end here of this V. Remember, we don't actually have a vaccine for the virus. So is there a chance that we're going to see another return, another swing, another V, if you will, later in the year or into next year? So think about that too. Are you prepared for this to happen a second time? And where I'm going with that is into the pillars, into the finance here. Um, we need to start thinking about investment opportunities, inventory that you might want to purchase that hasn't been selling recently. Maybe there's maybe it's available at a discount right now. So maybe you want to take advantage and say, I'm playing the long game here. I know that at some point in time, my business is going to be reopened. Maybe I should start purchasing and buying some materials that I need in order to get my business up and running. And so as the scale up occurs, I've got product, and even in the short period of time, I might have even gotten a discount at it by buying now when the market is depressed. Think about that. Operations. Also, we have to recognize, and we sort of touched on this in the leadership side, on the management side already, but with the upswing, are you ready? Do you need to get some products? Do you need to have conversations with staff to say, on this day, we got the green light to get started again? Here's what day one looks like. Are you having those conversations? You may need to. And also think about this. There are some industries, I think as I read from the Reopen Saskatchewan, they talked about hairdressers and hairstylists being open as part of the phase 2, if I'm not mistaken. I can understand that there is a huge demand for those services, and so they're all going to. I mean, I know that in our household, my wife can't wait for some of the services to open, and I'm sure they're thinking about pre-booking. So you want to know that if you're in one of those industries that maybe the government didn't consider and deem you as quote unquote essential services, you're going to be in demand, and so they're looking for you when the message when businesses get started again. You're going to have to be ready to be able to handle the upswing. Again, human resources, nurturing the relationships with your existing staff. Those conversations, are you having those now? And if you're not, why not? That's a really important part of the recovery side of things. And as you're rebounding, same thing applies to sales and marketing. When are you open? I see a message here even in the chat that says we're reopening on May 19th. So that's Sonia who writes that in. Exactly. So if you know that, are you telling people that you're going to be open on the 19th? Are you not open on the 19th because you're waiting for products? Lots of things that you want to make sure that is being communicated out in the market. So if you're wondering, well, what should I be doing? Do I need to market? Do I need to be working on my sales and marketing? The answer is absolutely yes. Okay, so make sure you're communicating what your customers what they should be able to expect from you. Okay, so any questions on that? And if you do have any, by all means, please pop them into the chat space. Okay, so I'm going to move into the next phase, which is called Reimagine Ation. And in the Reimagine phase, this is where you take a look at your business and you reimagine. You think about the next normal, the changes that have occurred, the shift, and the way that people are perceiving the world now. It absolutely has an impact on the way that your business is going to grow. So think about how your business might need to shift in going forward in the new economy. So we've already been living a different life than we had a month ago. It's going to change behaviors, interests, opinions as citizens, as employees, consumers. And so we need to recognize that those are going to have an impact to the way people make decisions on where they buy and where they spend their money. Institutions, they're already looking at how to make themselves better. And it goes without saying that even in this period for the past month, where it's all been about contactless commerce, people still had to buy things, but there's distance, there's all these new rules that have been applied. So as consumers, our opinions as to way that we see things, it's all changed, and it's going to change forever. So the question is also going to be, in the past, have you been thinking about um, what might change in the way you do business? So one example is, in the past, what we would do is we would say, well, I can source this item for $1 here in Canada, but it might cost me 10 cents if I was to source it in other parts of the world. So from an economic and from a financial perspective, we might say, why don't we go ahead and get the one for 10 cents instead of spend $1? But you can see that because of the way that pandemics and epidemics play out, your global supply chain is not as resilient as once thought. So would you consider diversifying and maybe buying some things that are closer to home, or closer, it's the buy local, not only because it's a good thing to do in the sense of keeping money sort of in a community, but it might also be strategically important for you to source your partners locally too, so that in the event that there are going to be pain points in the supply chains, maybe you'll be less affected. So think about that. Another thing to mention is the what is it about your business? What can you do to make your business more resilient to shocks? Is there a way to be more productive? Are you better? Have you learned something new, or found a way, or thought about a way that you might be able to better deliver to your customers? So this is an opportunity. This is a chance in Reimagination for us to say, what if? How about? Let's try. And then the other question is that, and I've had this. It's a very honest question that you need to have with yourself. If you weren't profitable before COVID-19, then you might have discovered that what COVID-19 did for you is it probably amplified the fact. So this is absolutely the right time to make some serious decisions about your business. How do you want to come back after this is all done, and we sort of move into that new normal? Is it your products, or is it your services that needs to be shifted? Is it about closing the business? One of the things is that I would mention is that if you can, or if you don't have a person to talk to, make sure that, especially as WESK members, talk to your business advisor. This is something where sometimes having that objective person that you can talk to and say, these are the things that are going through my mind. I don't know, or I was okay as a business pre-COVID, but I don't want to be okay. I want to be amazing. I want my business to thrive. I want it to grow. And well, these are the kind of conversations you may want to have with your business advisor. So there's a little bit of a selfless plug in there, just to say that it might be worth your time to do that. Also, when you're reinventing and rediscovering, reimagining your business, you should consider the costs in your businesses that are fixed versus variable. If you have production levels that are far higher than what you really need, can you run a more leaner operation? So think about that. HR-wise, again, what's the impact of the loss of efficiency that might be experienced when with the whole global production? Are you really, just because they say that, for example, you're reopened on May 19th, are you going to be 100% operating on May 19th? Right? So it's those questions, right? And so do you push the the envelope when it comes to technology adoption? So uh, do you ask yourself, this used to be a manual process. Can I use technology that might make the work easier, maybe even more consistent? So as you're going through this and you're asking yourself, what might I do now differently than I did before? Make sure, if you do decide that you've got a new product or service as well, let your customers know. Sales and marketing. This is valuable content that you can use even on your social media push. Um, I'm just looking at the chat really quickly here, and I'm just seeing some comments coming up here. Should we be thinking about how to be more diversified when in what we can offer in the new normal? Absolutely, that is such an important thing to be doing, and that's exactly what you want to do, especially in Reimagine Ation. Is should you be saying, I used to provide this service before, I can still provide that, but to give me a little bit of support. Maybe I need to be, if I've traditionally been a service provider, is it relevant? Should I be also a product provider too? So think about that. Just like what logically can be provided through your business offerings. I would say you don't want to necessarily make a quantum leap of a difference when it comes to what you're offering. If you are an OT, I suspect having a division to sell fresh fruits doesn't exactly make the most sense. So you need to be reasonable in where you're diversifying. But I think it's an absolute essential, and this is the time to be looking at those things. And oh no, that's not a question. Yep. Yeah, no, and so depending on where you are and where you are in your business, yes, there's going to be different phases. You may have the luxury of reopening sooner than later, but again, just make sure that you're doing it in a succinct and clear and strategic thought as you do it. Finally, we're going to talk about the reform, which is that things are going to be changed, things are going to be different from what they were in the past. And in reform, it's where we start to see some changes in regulation and in competitive environments in industries that you didn't necessarily anticipate happening that may end up happening. So what's that mean? Okay. You can appreciate that nobody wants to have another COVID-19 anytime soon. So what's going to happen is there's going to be pressure on governments to say, you need to do something so this doesn't happen again. We cannot sustain such a hard hit on our economy. So do something. And there's going to be an impact. There's going to be some sort of regulatory or policy changes that are coming. What are they exactly? I don't know if I can answer that today, but you can see that nobody wants to have another shutdown anytime soon. So you need to be aware that changes could be coming, and the way that you've been doing business may not be the same. If you were in a business that required touching, maybe gloves are going to become, that were considered optional in the past, maybe they're going to become mandatory now. So think about that. There's going to be changes that are going to come, and in our world today, like, we really haven't had much changes in our healthcare system, post World War II, and so we need to think about whether or not the changes that are coming up, how those things could end up turning into policy changes, and so therefore consider that things may not be the way they were, not because your business has required it, because policy and public policy has determined that it needs to be done differently. And so with that reform, another thought that we wanted to put forward is, have you even thought about, on the go forward basis, because of the changes, because of the chances that there could be another sort of a follow-up piece to this, to an economic shock. Are you thinking about maybe in your finance having a policy or adding something to give you an emergency fund, so that if there's a short acute blip again, you've got some relief, so that you're not caught necessarily without having enough supports. And it's very likely that there's going to be social innovations experiments that are going to be happening throughout. That's going to come out of this whole pandemic. So some of these will result in innovations, and these innovations will become permanent in our world today. So unfortunately, though, that some of them, in the spirit of doing things differently, it could ultimately inhibit the broader betterment of society. We may be posed with a situation where it may not be the greatest for business, but someone deems that it's better for society, and therefore, and therefore, it gets turned into a policy of some capacity. So you need to think about that something is coming. It may or may not affect your industry specifically, but something is going to come. Some other thoughts that I want to share very quickly as well is that you're a business owner, but you're also a consumer. So this is the time right now when buying is important, and when we start to see in the rebound phase, we start to see that economies are going to start moving again. And so make sure that you're spending a little bit. Like if you were going to consume, then consume, buy, order things, try things that you haven't done before. Why? It's all in the spirit. It's all in the it all supports the growth and the rebound phase of the economy. So it's really important. And if you feel like you're looking at some of the supports that are coming through the pipes, and you're wondering about yes, I see there's some federal opportunities, but they still don't apply to me for the following reasons. Again, I just want to reiterate that advocacy is a very important part of what we do at WESK. Surveys, we ask those questions, talk to your business advisors. All of these kind of conversations that we can have, this communication, is something that we can push back up to federal and provincial governments and say, you know what, this isn't working. We've done it. We've already made some really great strides with some of the surveys that you've been seeing already. So, thanks for your participation in those surveys. But there may be more information that we're going to ask from you, and we'd really, really like to get some more support and be a support pillar for you on a go forward. Before we close off, I just want to draw your attention to a key point here for tools and resources. At the WESK website, we have a page called COVID-19, and there's a lot of information that you'll see there with respect to where places to seek out information. So do have a look at that. See if there's something there that you're looking for. If not, you by all means please have a conversation with your business advisor. We're constantly updating that page. And if there's information that we need to add to it, then we will add on to it. So just wanted to make sure that was known, and to make sure that you check that out. And as we're getting close to the end here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly look at the chats and see if there's any questions that need to be fielded. But I can see that there's some really good conversations just about. I see one comment here about thinking about the business side of the business. Yes, there's the practice and there's the operational things, but you need to sort of take a good look at the long game in terms of how your business is set up for growth. And that's why we really focused on those 5 horizons. We want to make sure that you look at those and say, okay, I see where we are now. We're starting to be more into that rebound stage. So as we start to getting into the horizon 3 and the return, yeah, you need to see that these are the things that are likely coming up and going to be a part of your business. Comment here, some comments here about shouldn't just consume but support local business. Absolutely. Very good point. Thank you for bringing that forward. Yes, do support and make sure that it's the best opportunities that we have to coming back strong. So 100% agree with you. Keeping the doors open, no debate. Lots of good comments here. We got one more here about just reading the comments here. Signing a document to lease space. Yeah. So when it comes to the whole rent and the leasing side of things, every situation is going to be unique. But I would say take a look at the support pillars. You may even be able to. To negotiate a better, if you haven't signed something already, you can absolutely use this as an opportunity to negotiate some preferred a preferred relationship, even for the short term. So it's a hard question to answer exactly just without knowing more of the details. But I'd say absolutely this is the right time to start looking at these kind of things. I can take some of these questions offline as well. And speak to them too. And don't forget as well that you, if you have a business advisor, please talk to them. We've got lots of great information. My information here is on the slide right now. And if there's anything else that I can answer for you, I'm going to stick around for a little while here. Otherwise, don't be afraid to reach out, email, talk to one of the team here at WESK, and we'd be delighted to answer your questions. So, but thanks. There's been a lot of homework in this. Just so you know, I hope you didn't furiously try to write down everything. We're going to make this available and provide this information to you so that you can just digest it even after the fact. And if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. This information is going to be updated a few more times, and so as we have more updates made available, we'll be sure to circulate that out as well. So, but anyway, do reach out. I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you even just a little hint of some next steps and maybe how to process what's going on, especially from the business lens. I don't want to speak to it from a health lens, but I definitely want to speak to it from a business lens to say, we've read this book in the history of the world. We understand this. There is a path forward. The pieces that have been laid out in this document, they're on point. They're not maybe specific to every business case, but they should lead you in the right direction. And if you want more specific information, as I say, don't ever hesitate to reach out to one of your business advisor. Or me directly. So thanks very much. I don't see any other questions. It was my absolute pleasure to share this information to you, and just let me know if there's anything else that I can answer for you. I'll be here. Thanks.